the idea is to be able to shift. And that's the whole point of it. And we're doing that all day, every day. But it's having conversations like this with ladies like you who get us to acknowledge and be aware of it. It's not that it's bad. It's that you can be aware of it, acknowledge it, and then shift. I think is the main kind of takeaway that I'm kind of getting from this. Tessa, you're up.
Thank you. And actually, I think the question I have, it kind of leads on from what you were just saying again. I think we talked about like whether you talk about ego or identity, and again, all these different ways of that you can interpret that. But I think we seem to all agree here, and from what people have been sharing, from people who have been listening, I think that that seems to be underlying their questions and comments too, is that idea of like there is the, you can call it your true self or the integrated ego or your soul or whatever it is, but like, and some people said that you're diamond, letting yourself shine, and then there is the things that mask that, whether it's labels that other put on you or your own labels or your masks or your coats or whatever way you see that. So for me, it's really that we have these layers, and if you, again, you could call it get rid of or let go, you know, the words, it always is hard to put it in words because then already it can have a certain connotation and it means something different from everyone. But I think we get the gist that in a way it's like, okay, whichever way you see that, that you can let, you know, yourself, your true self shine. But that also that we talked a lot about it in how things can, labels and identities can be negative if it's connotated to this ego that stops us from being our true self. But I think there's also stuff that we really like. And again, I would compare it to like, if you want to think like, okay, I'm not really happy with my lifestyle and I want to change it. And then you think, yes, I definitely want to get rid of, like, for instance, I don't know, unhealthy foods and other things. But when you change, when you shift, I think one of the things that Iris mentioned as well, like about this feeling of like, do I feel love or fear? And I think that's totally true, except that every change also always carries an element of a feeling of fear, even if it's what we really feel is the absolute right thing to do. So I think it's also good to see that part of where might there be a fear or a resistance that is more a resistance to that shift that you just mentioned, Sabrina, that where you know you want to shift, but there's also still something you need to get through. So my question really is, like, in this whole process, and again, it's a lifelong journey, so it's always ongoing, but what if you maybe experienced once of like being on that journey where you did feel maybe that resistance or fear, and something that there was also an element of, I don't want to get rid of this, or I don't want to let this go, or I like this identity, right? And whether that might be because it made you, you know, feel good, or that it might also be it was a nice one to hide around. I know for myself there might also be the one that people, you know, I could hide behind, that people saw me as kind of babbly and upfront, and I could hide around it because I could say things that other people couldn't, and sometimes that was nice, but sometimes I also knew that I therefore didn't have to work on, sometimes maybe also be a bit more conscious of how what I said landed with other people, right? So is there something there where you think, yeah, there, I know it's part of the process, and also it might be you're just not ready, and that's also okay, that you also have that choice where you feel like, hey, yes, this is part of it, but just not right now. Tori, I think first.
So I have a very recent one with this. I was a single mom for 3 years, and within the last year, my boyfriend moved in with me. And it was really hard for me to let go of that identity of being a single mom. Because it, like, there's so much pride behind that, and there's so much like, I can do everything, I can conquer the world and stuff. And you know, like, one could argue I couldn't even have said that because his dad is so involved, like his biological father, but now he has like an amazing stepdad and a biological father who's very involved, and me. And so it's like, you know, he is he's good, and I am now able to relax, and I can, like, you know, release that identity of being, you know, the super mom with a cape and stuff like that. And that was hard for me to let go. And it's still like, I was surprised at how much of a grieving process I had to go through internally when I released that, because you know, it's like nobody wants a single mom. Nobody wants to be a single mom. Like that's not the goal of any little girl, usually. And but I just think I was like, that was me for 3 years. And so I had I had so much attachment to that identity that when I didn't have it anymore, I was like, oh no, I can't let that go. Like, no. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I must say goosebumps, because I think it's so beautiful what you're saying. And also, yeah, and it shows that shift, right? It shows how, but also how, and I think that's so important with these things, to first of all accept that that's how you're feeling about it, right? Because if we change something from the perspective, oh, I should be able to let it go, or it should be different, instead of, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, and that's okay. But then the difference between, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, so that's it, but more, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now what do I need to change? So thank you. Karen.
Tori, that was just okay. Just stunning. So, but my identity actually, I'm going to talk about something that happened a few years ago. I just realized this too. Like, I was always my parents' child, right? I'm Harriet and Maurice's daughter. I was Jeffrey's sister. I'm Nicole and Jordan's mom. I'm Jason's wife, Jason's soon to be ex wife. I was someone else. I was always tied to someone or something else. And my identity for a really long time was I was that working mom with a side gig. You know, I was a corporate working mom with it, and then I ended up having my side gig. And when I lost my job almost 4 years ago now, I was like, oh crap, what am I? Like, I had no idea who I was, because I literally had tied my identity to being everything else but Karen. But I came across like I was Karen, and I came across all, happy and peppy and bursting with love. But on the inside, I wasn't so much happy and peppy and bursting with love. And it took me a really long time to um to say, you know what, I'm Karen. Like, I can detach from I can be Karen, and that's good enough, because I was attached to the not good enough. The whole thing of being someone else's identity was attached to the not good enough thing. And it took me quite some time to surrender. And that's what I'm still working on. That's what led me to all the things I'm currently working on now. But it was a huge, huge pivot and shift, and something I didn't even realize I had until I lost it, quite frankly. So there's a lot of times I think we tie ourselves up in an identity and we don't even realize that's what we did. It's unintentional until we possibly lose it, and then have to make that shift. And just to the point of, I've been resisting the shift for quite some time, and that's how only 2 weeks ago did that whole Sandy analogy come to me, because that was even for myself, because I'm always all about you be you, and it's really important to be authentic, and I'm always about that. And I was realizing that I needed to shed like a snake, like an onion, and peel the layers to get rid of get get rid of the things that weren't serving me, so that I could, get more of what is serving me, so that I can make a massive impact on other people's lives.
Thanks, Karen. And I think you mentioned the word surrender, and I think that's key, right? It's that surrendering. And I think some people mentioned it before, that, if there's somewhere that you want to be, that it can be great to paint that picture. And then in the same time, surrendering to what's here right now, and then build on that, basically. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants anything else to share about this? Otherwise, we'll move on. Yeah, Jennifer.
So really quickly, I was sexually abused by my dad. So for most of my life, I carried that around with me, that it was my fault, and that it was something that I had carried a lot of guilt and shame, basically my entire life, until 3 years ago. That was well, first of all, I was so embarrassed of it. I never told anyone my entire life. And now I'm like extremely public with it. I've told the world. And so my point is that my identity was like always hiding and always like not living up to like that story. It was a big part of me. And now I've been able to surrender that was not my shame and my guilt to hold. And I put that back on my dad. That's for him to hold. And that was a huge, huge, huge like turning point in my life, when I was able to take that off of myself and put it back on the person that did it in the first place. So I know we're up, but I just wanted to share that because that was a really big thing for me in my journey. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's, well, most powerful expression as well of how when there is something we think that needs to be hidden and we don't, like, you know, something like this big, but there can be smaller things for other people that you don't show or don't say. It actually is more powerful and bigger than when you actually allow it to be visible to yourself or others. And then it loses its power if it's like in this way, if it's like what you said, as it was holding you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Tori, I think you're next up.
Yes, thank you.